Hi, my name is Tracy Rekart, and I am a leadership coach and consultant. I am also a climber. So one of the first things, let's just clarify here, I'm a human, right? I may be a leadership and organizational development coach and consultant. I may have been doing this for a very long time, 16, 15 years, something like that, maybe longer, I can't remember. I am a human. So there are ways in which I am good at certain things and bad at certain things. There are ways where I may use foul language at periods of time. There are, many things that I do really well, and then also some of the things where I'm still a learner. I'm a lifelong learner. Okay, the next thing is that I'm a professional, right? I've told you all about that already. I'm a climber. This is me on Northeast Buttress in Mount Goody a couple of years ago. And I've also been a climbing instructor, so I was a guide for alpine ascent a long, long time ago, and then I've been a climber since the early 90s. I'm a mom, so I have two kids. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, 14-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy. So a lot of the reasons why I go out in the community and teach these types of courses is because I think that they're vitally important to all humans, and especially people who interface with other humans, right, which is hopefully most of us. And then I'm also a partner. I'm a partner in life. My partner, which you'll hear about him in a minute, who brought my power cord a minute ago, and partner in life, partner in climbing, partner in business. We kind of do everything, to partner in parenting. Kind of do everything together, which is mostly a good thing, but can sometimes lead to challenges, right? Partnership is complex and intricate. How I work. So today we're going to, this is the Northwest Avalanche Center course that I did a little while ago. I start with provocative questions. So questions that provoke a little bit of thinking, or thinking outside of the box that you're normally used to thinking or living within. Then what usually happens is there's small group conversation. So groups of 2 or groups of 3, and people get together and converse about different things. Usually there's a debrief, because then we take all that learning that happens in those small groups and then we bring it to the big group. So the big group gets to learn from what the small groups discussed. Sometimes small group learning is a little bit easier for people to feel comfortable sharing, especially if it's more intimate details or if they're provocative questions. And one of the things that I also do is that a little bit of what I'm teaching you here in the actual content, there's also a bit of a meta process too. So if you are in business or lead groups or those sorts of things, some of the things that I may do here may end up being interesting or valuable for you to use in the groups that you teach as well. So if you're curious about any of those processes or practices, please come up and talk to me after the course. Then there's usually a little learning and teaching. Sometimes I learn almost as much as you do, or maybe more. And then there's some sort of action that we do, right? We were talking earlier about the idea of being a climber is being in practice. Like, if you're not practicing, you're probably not going to be as sharp as you need to be, right? Or with anything that we want to do well in life, we have to actually practice it in order to be good at it. So that's kind of the deal. Okay, so tonight, first we're going to start with a story. So on July 14th of this past year, my partner and I were climbing. And we both have been climbing since the early 90s. So he's taught, climbed mountains all over the world, guided mountains all over the world. I've guided mountains, more of a technical rock climber. And we were at Index, and it was our first day out. I'd broken my toe in January, and so I hadn't been climbing. So we had a day where the kids were at a knife making workshop. They made the coolest knives, by the way, but anyway, that's an aside. And so we went to Index and we went climbing. We climbed Senior Citizens in Outer Space. Anybody familiar with that route? 5-7, Index, a very popular route, really clean, just beautiful place-to-place gear and nice, they're developing the space at the bottom. Anyway. So we went climbing, and we climbed the route 4 times. He led it first, which is usually my deal, but because of my toe, I let him go first. I top roped it, then I led it, and then he climbed it a 3rd time because he wanted to get up to the top and just think about how he was going to rappel with our daughter a couple of days later. They were going to go and climb Ingalls Peak. And a few minutes later, I hear, he fell. He fell 50 feet and shattered his right tibial plateau and his left foot. What happened, right? What happened? We were partners. We were climbing together. We had talked about it, like, I'm gonna do you want me to keep you on belay? No, I'm going to rappel. Okay, cool. I want to work through my systems. Okay, it's taking a little bit of time. There's rope here, there's rope there, there's rope on a ledge. How many people have rappelled when there's been rope on a ledge? I mean, maybe you don't do that, but having been climbing for over 25 years, it's like, I see rope piled up on the ledge. I knew I threw half. I knew I threw the other half. I'm going to work it out when I get down to the bottom. That was kind of the assumption that he had when he was at the top. But the funny thing is that we had decided to switch from a bi-weave rope to a single color rope at the end of last year. We had climbed the route 4 times. You would think that he would have noticed, but he didn't. Remember that we changed. He was looking for the weave change and thought there was more rope. So, what gets in the way of sharing an assessment in a partnership? Okay. So another way that I work before we get into the conversation, since there's questions, right? Provocative questions, questions where you might not know exactly where you're going when I ask them, questions that might make you think differently about, like, well, what is an assessment? What do I mean by an assessment? What does she mean by an assessment? Right? They might cause you to just think outside of the box or be confused enough to be uncomfortable. Because a lot of the times when we're thinking about giving assessments within a partnership, right? The reason why I didn't say anything to my partner, like, hey, you doing okay up there? Hey, you have seems like you're pulling up a lot of rope. Hey, do you need any help? You want me to check the lines? The reason why I didn't say anything is, like, I didn't want to get into it with him. I'm always bossy in our partnership when we're climbing. I'm always giving him advice. I'm always telling him what to do. Like, oh, of course, I reclipped the anchor when I got up to the top because it wasn't the way that I wanted it to be, right? So there's a way that I was always bossy, and he didn't ask me. He wasn't interested in my opinion. He thought a few times, I should just check and see. I should ask her if there's knots in both the ends, right? It was a 70-meter rope for a 100-foot climb. We always put the knots in the end of the rope when the kids are climbing with us. We just didn't do it that day. And that was the end that he rappelled off of. So I want you to be a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm going to have you talk to somebody that's maybe not someone that you know. And that's part of what we're going to do for the rest of this time today. So you have 2 minutes. What gets in the way of sharing an assessment with a partner? Go. All right, so these are my bells. The room is small enough that you all can hear them. So when I ding them, that means it's come on back. So what gets in the way of sharing an assessment with a partner? Nothing. Okay, what else gets in the way? Anybody else come up with something different?
I just shared at the end, sometimes gender roles. Mm-hmm. I climb with a lot of guys, and a lot of them have more experience than I do, and I kind of tend to just take a back seat when in my head I'm thinking I should question it. And I don't.
Great, thank you for sharing. Yeah, happens to all of us.
Try not to, but
yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, totally. We'll talk about the reason why. Anybody come up with something different?
Expert halo.
Yeah.
Like maybe if I'm climbing with a new partner,
yeah,
or somebody who has more experience than I do, I don't want them to think I'm nervous, or I don't want them to think I'm overcautious.
Right. So managing their perception of you, in a sense. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. No, fear of how they'll receive the assessment.
Yeah. Totally.
And maybe someone else said that using different words. I don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. So yeah, exactly. All of those things that you just said. Okay, so now you get the definition of assessment. Are you ready? An assessment is our opinion about another person's impact. On our, others, or the system's ability to fulfill on its goal. So our opinion about another person's impact. That's better. Awesome. On our, others, or system's ability to fulfill on its goal. So I'm not sure that that's the technical definition in the dictionary, but that's the definition that I have for an assessment. We're going to work with assessments today. That's the whole title of this this thing today. All of my slides I did red, so. Okay, so the difference between an assessment and feedback is, and most of the time, right, like how many organizations have you worked in where they're like, oh, we have a feedback model, or here's how we give feedback, or those sorts of things. Well, it was curious for me as I think about feedback. We teach a feedback model as well, but feedback is the modification or control of a process or system by its results or effects. So like in my story, right, I could tell my partner Neil, who did walk in here and give me that power cord if you saw. So he is, you know, on the road to recovery, though there's still a long road ahead. But so I would say to him, like, hey, that result sucked. And could you next time do something different, right? Like that would be kind of a pretty shitty way to experience something that happened after the fact, right? Whereas if we're thinking about, oh, I can go backwards here. If we're thinking about an assessment, which is our opinion or judgment about our shared goal, like that's more of thing in the moment that I could share. So an assessment tends to be something more in the moment, and feedback tends to be something maybe that after we see the resolution of a system. So maybe we go through a climbing class, or we take people up Mount Baker to do a snow course, and at the end, or at the end of this course, right, you'll all be asked to give feedback. So there's a conclusion to the process so that you can think back and reflect upon it and offer feedback about what has occurred. Whereas an assessment is more in the moment. Okay, now we're gonna do something a little bit different. So what I'm gonna have you do, and this will be, we're gonna actually just do it twice because it's a small group. Usually I would do it 3 times. Is you're gonna have a conversation with another person about these 2 things. So what I'm going to have you do is you all are going to get into groups of 2. So I saw that there were some groups of 3. We'll do groups of 3 later, but I would appreciate it if you were in groups of 2. What's going to happen is you're going to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Tracy.
Hi, I'm Lonnie.
Nice to meet you. And then you're going to have a 3-minute conversation about these 2 questions. So it's the amount of time is not going to be long enough for both of you to have an in-depth conversation. If you find yourself getting into an interesting conversation with somebody else, you know, you can say, hey, let's go to lunch or something like that and talk more about this. But it's 3 minutes intentionally. I'm going to ding that bell that you heard earlier. You're going to thank your partner. Thank you, Lonnie.
Thank you, Tracy.
And then you're going to find a new partner. Hi, I'm Tracy.
Maybe.
Nice to meet you. And then you're going to have that 3-minute conversation with that partner, okay? And then I'll ding the bell, and then I may just have you do it one more time. I don't know yet. We'll see. I'll tell you whether it's either time to go back to your seats or time to switch to a new partnership. We'll see how I'm doing on time. And then you're to have this conversation. And then the what is partnership is the first one. So maybe you both go and talk about what is partnership. And then how could you really screw up a partnership? So I want you to take some notes, like, and I want you to be playful with it. Like, how could I really screw up a partnership? Like, have some fun with it. Like, really go out on a limb. Like, what could you do? And then we're going to debrief what it is that you come up with after the fact. So maybe one person takes notes while the other one's speaking and vice versa, and you just scribble your things on those sheets. And then you may end up finding out that there are patterns emerging through your different conversations. Yeah, we're gonna do it 3 times. Okay, so you'll have 3 minutes each, and are you ready? So go. All right, thank your partner, and you can return to your seats. All right, so what is partnership? Ready when you are. Working together towards a common goal. Okay. Anything else?
Looking out for one another.
Okay. Looking out for one another. Anything else?
How about shared interests?
Shared interests.
Shared values?
Great. Anything else?
Shared commitment.
Commitments.
You might not have the same goal, but you're committed to helping each other get to each other's goals.
Great. So shared interests, values, and commitments. Anything else people came up with?
Respect others' limits.
Great.
That you're truly happy for the other person's success.
Mm. What about how could you really screw up partnership? What'd you come up with that?
Breaking trust.
Breaking trust.
Dropping them.
That would kind of be like breaking trust,
Yeah.
dropping them. Yeah. Okay.
Dishonesty.
Dishonesty. What else?
No follow through.
No follow through.
Lack of communication or communication breakdown.
So lack of communication, communication breakdown, being mean. I'm limited by my ability to write quickly. What else?
Breaking a commitment.
Breaking a commitment.
Not having a agreed upon way of resolving like conflict.
Anything else?
Not present.
Not present. What's that? Yeah. So breaking trust, breaking commitment, dishonesty, no follow through, lack of communication or communication breakdown, being mean, no agreed upon conflict model, not being present. What else you got on your sheets?
Changing over time, you know, you change what you expect from the other person, you know, change your interests or your values or your commitments change.
So shifting commitments, values.
How about addictions?
Addictions. Great. What else? How can you really screw up partnership? What's that? Giving up. What about, what else? What about John? You got anything back here?
My big thing is trust.
Okay.
Honesty.
Anybody else have anything on their lists that's not up here so far?
Lack of empathy.
Lack of empathy.
Disloyal?
Lack of empathy and disloyal. Great. So one of the things, so now my next question for you might be, I'm kind of going to turn the tables on you a little bit. This is a little bit about the provocative questions, but like, what of these things over here have you done in your life, in your partnerships, right? So like, there's a lot of things that we aspire to do and be, but there are some things that we end up like walking ourselves into. Like, I wouldn't say that I had a lack of communication on July 14th when my husband fell off the wall, right? But there was a lack of communication. Like, if I'm really honest with myself, I didn't say what was on my mind and he didn't say what was on his mind, and that was a lack of communication. We weren't talking about what was going on. Now, granted, there were many times where we had talked about it and things got conflictual, and there are many other times where we hadn't talked about it and everybody went home safe, right? This is just the one time, the perfect storm of events that happened where things didn't go quite the way that we hoped that they would go, right? So was that because we didn't have shared interests? We have shared interests, values, commitments. We're truly happy for each other's success. We're trying to look out for each other. We're working together. We have a common goal. And we try to respect each other's limits. But still, like, I don't want to say that partnership, how could I really screw it up, is by a lack of communication or not following through. Like, did I not ask him? I didn't finish. I didn't tie a knot in the other end of the rope. I didn't even think about it, to be honest with you, you know? Like, it was a 70-meter rope for a 100-foot climb. So, like, these are things that, like, what of these do we already do in partnership, and what is it that we want to stop doing so that we can be a better partner? So that's just a question for you all to contemplate. Great. So, moving on. I have a clicker. So the crux, I love how big this is. The crux is that we assess other people. So in partnerships, we assess other people for their impact they have on us. But we assess ourselves for the intention behind our actions. Does that make sense? So we assess others for the impact, like, you're really messing with me because, but I am true and good and kind and benevolent and all those sorts of things that we want to be, right? So we assess ourselves about our intention, but we assess others because of their impact. But our assessment of them has more to do with our comfort, our filters, our way of being, than their behavior. Like, their behavior is their behavior. We're the ones that are getting triggered by their behavior, right? Oh, look. Okay, so we are humans. We are a work in progress. We are complex organisms. There are many things going on many times all throughout our heads, brains, bodies, all those sorts of things. Interaction, like things that they're coming up with these days that are totally rocking the scientific world about how we're communicating with each other without words or language, that we've been able to do that for millennia. We have a habit pattern of thought, mood, and action. So we all have a way that we move through the world. It's habitual. We keep doing it all the time. It's just the way, our way of being, and people probably have reflected that back to us. You know, in the feedback that we've gotten throughout our lives. You're stone-faced. You're so happy all the time. You're so whatever it is. There's a way, an affect that we have that other people in the world see. And after food, water, and shelter, all have three basic needs for survival. All humans have three basic needs. They want to be safe, and you guys spoke about this earlier in the first share. They want to have connection, right? The reason why we don't maybe say something when we're with climbers that are, what did you say, the halo effect? Like, we want to stay in connection with them, right? There's a reason why we don't say other things. We want to stay safe in community. Or we all want to have a sense of dignity. Like, my husband didn't want to ask me for my opinion because he didn't really want me to, this wasn't really a factor, but right, Lonnie, it could be the woman down at the bottom in front of a group of men that were all climbing there together to telling him what to do, right? Like, there may be dignity issues with that, like a sense of respect or dignity, right? So when these three basic needs get threatened, threats to our basic needs, we are hardwired. Like, these things, these three basic needs are literally hardwired into our body and brain. We evolved to take care of them. When our brain stem evolved from our distributed nervous system, so we started out as just having a sensory motor capability. We gained the ability to fight, flight, or flee, right? When our amygdala formed. Our amygdala in another part of our nervous system formed at a certain time. That gave us a few more moves. On top of that, our limbic system formed when mammals came on the scene. So we were able to connect with each other without words. Whales know what's going on with the other whales in the pod, or other mammals know what's happening. They don't have language to talk about it like we humans do, but they still know what's going on. They have a very complex system of connecting, and it all happens below words. That's our limbic system. That's the one that manages connection. The amygdala manages safety, and the one that manages dignity is the neocortex, which is the last system to develop. So that system manages, like, where do I fit into the social role of my everyday life? How do I maintain my role? How do I gain my sense of self or dignity? So all of these things are at play. When there's some sort of threat to any one of these things, our body reacts or responds. Most people's, like, there may be a very small segment of the population who don't actually respond because of some sort of neurological issue or some sort of other reasons, right? But most of us, even if we don't think that we do, all have a trigger response, something that happens within our system when one of these three things are threatened, and we go into our habit pattern of behavior or action or mood. Oh, when we're threatened, we make conscious or unconscious assumptions, right? We start to tell stories in our head. I might be preempting myself. Threats to our basic needs trigger a response within our body. We may not turn into the Hulk, but something happens where we start automatically going down a road that is what we feel safe doing, what we feel comfortable doing. They set in motion this habit pattern of action in our mind. We tell stories about what's going on when we're triggered. Oh, they don't know, or oh, we make assumptions about what people are doing or why they're doing it, or stories in our head about how we're not smart enough or good enough or this sort of thing. We also have responses in our body. Our body reacts and responds to these threats too, and like I said, sets in motion these habit patterns of action. So we are hardwired to detect and react to real or perceived threats to our basic needs to ensure our survival. Real or perceived. So they could be real threats, but a lot of the times in our day-to-day lives, are they real threats? More so, it's perceived. Like, we have this idea that something is threatening us. And this can be conscious or unconscious, right? We can unconsciously be moving through the world, being triggered quite regularly. Many of the people that I work with, this is their daily life. Moving through the world, being triggered regularly and not really knowing what's going on. Not necessarily being in choice about their actions or reactions. They're just merely responding to their habit patterns of action, mood, and thought that they have been in for a long time. So the goal of this course today is to build trust and partnership. Like, how do we build trust and partnership, right? Like, how do we stop doing some of the things that we might already be doing and really work towards these types of goals for partnership? How do we increase our attention? How do we know a little bit about maybe what triggers us, or how we get triggered, or why we get triggered? And then how do we speak up or stand down, right? In a situation, like, is there a situation where I need to speak up and say something, or is this a situation where I might need to close my mouth and listen for a little bit, right? Okay. Turn to your neighbor. I don't care who you turn to at this point. Turn to anybody you want to, and have a 1-minute conversation about what you're getting out of that. You may have to talk to me. All right, so tell me a little bit, just like a quick 1 or 2 word about what you're getting out of, what you got out of this so far. That was a lot of information. Crickets.
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, great. In what way?
Just the way that it ran down in regards to your reaction that becomes subconscious, and then the actions that you take in order to realize those triggers, and then what you can do to change those behaviors by being aware of them.
Great, so cognitive behavioral therapy, the actions, the reactions, the actions you can take to change that via when you know that you're being triggered. Yeah. Great. Anybody else? Yeah.
I was just sharing with these guys. I took a course a while back, and one of the things that I learned.
Hang on a sec. Let me do this microphone. Is that going to go all the way?
I can talk up if I need.
Well, it's not going to go all the way. I'll just repeat it. It's okay. Go ahead.
story and reaction to something on a situation that might not be based in reality at all. And so you really need to sometimes look at something and really think, is that me or is that, them?
Great.
For real.
That's
'Cause
great.
most of the time it's not real at all.
Totally. That's beautiful. Yeah. So I'm sure everybody heard that, but like sometimes we put a story on somebody that's not their story, not their story at all, and we just assume that that's their story, and then we move through the world assuming that their story, only for 5 minutes, 2 years, 15 years later to find out that it's something totally different. Yeah. Anybody else get anything out of that? Moving on. Okay. Cool. All right. So the next piece is going to be a practice. So what's going to happen? Hey, Sarah, will you be my partner for a minute? So this time you're going to be in groups of 3. And we're not going to have a third person, but you can imagine what they're going to do. There's going to be one person that's moving, one person that's standing still, and one person that's observing. And what I want you to do is this. So it's always so interesting to me that when people watch this, see how closely you can watch it and see if you can repeat it later. All right, so I'm going to move toward you, and then you just stand and feel and sense, okay? All right. That's it. So, groups of 3. There's one person that's going to be the Tracy person, one person that's going to be the Sarah person, and one person that's going to be the observer. And then what you'll do when that's done is that the observer person is just looking at like what's happening for the Tracy person and what's happening for the Sarah person and what's happening for me watching what's going on here. So it's more of a felt sense of like what is this, what's happening in your body, like what's happening to you, like what's the most uncomfortable, what's the most comfortable, and I don't want to fill in too many of the details. So then when each person goes, you'll have, maybe just, you can do this your own way. You can either do it all 3 people go, and then, you're switching and then you debrief, or you can have a short debrief after each one. But try to keep the debrief short, like what happened, a couple words for each person. Does that make sense? Okay, so go. There'll be about 15 minutes for the whole thing. All right, come on back. We'll have another opportunity to work with this in a minute. All right, so which role? I heard a little bit, but it's always good to hear it in the room. There's something to having, like I said, these small group conversations, but then there's an important factor of like bringing those conversations back in the room. So what did people get out of who was it easier to be the one who moves, the one who stands still, or the one who observes? Who thought it was easier to be the one who moves? Raise your hand. Who thought it was easier to be the one who stands still? Raise your hand. Who thought it was easier to be the observer? Raise your hand. Interesting. So, like that is that's an interesting fact, right? You're all volunteers. You are the ones who are leading workshop or groups out in the field, and these kinds of things happen for you all the time. As the observer, that's interesting. If it's easy for you to be observer, maybe, I don't know, you can speculate on that on your own. Okay, and then who thought moving towards was the most comfortable? Raise your hand. Okay. Who thought turning away was the most comfortable? Yeah. And who thought moving behind the back was the most comfortable? Yeah. Great. And then, cool. And then what were some of the stories that were happening in your head when these things were occurring? Like what stories maybe surprised you, or did you make up any stories?
We have a lot of stories.
Me too. We all have a lot of stories, hopefully. Like, you know, we talked about like many people in my head at the same time. Like, were there the usual suspects that came up? Like, oh, you're not supposed to be doing it this way, or you did it wrong, or you should do it differently, or you know, those sorts of things. Anybody have those voices come up in their heads? Yeah? Great. Cool. Okay, so when we have a physical response to a threat, and a threat, right, can be a real threat or a perceived threat. It doesn't have to be something that's like a bear coming at us. It can be just something that we perceive as a threat. There are three responses that happen. We either start to move toward, we are either a move toward, or a move away, or a move against. So I wonder if you just think back into your life, when you've been triggered in one way or another. A move toward is someone who's like, oh, really uncomfortable, and they start getting super friendly. They're like, hey, oh, they want to get chummy with you, right? They want to be more connected to you, right? We talked about this, safety, connection, and dignity. So they're the one who's going to be like, move toward connection no matter what. We've met those people in our lives. They're the ones that are constantly trying to make people feel better. They don't seem to get disrupted. They're in the conversation no matter what. They want to side with the people that are getting upset. Maybe if there's somebody getting upset, they're trying to calm them down, right? They're trying to be friendly with them, to calm them down. Then there's the move away. Those are the people who are just like, I'm out of here. I don't need to, you know, this is my son. Like, he's like, any chance that anybody's yelling, he's like, leaves the room and closes his door in his room. He's a move away. He prefers not to get involved at all. So we can move away physically, or we can move away in our mind, where we check out, right? Become not present in partnership. We're just like, okay, I'm going to be here. I have to be here, but I'm going to check out in my mind. And then there's the move against. And those are the people that whenever there's a threat that they're responding to, they're just like, yeah, let's go. Come on, take it on. Take it up a notch. Like, I'll go. Like, I don't think that's right. Oh, well, you don't think that's right? Well, let me tell you all the 5 articles that I read that this is the right way to do it. And let me tell you all these da-da-da-da-da. They're those people that are a move against. And each one of these people, whether we see ourselves in them or we see them in other people, they need to be met in certain ways, and they exist. So how in partnership do we give these people assessments, right? Like, how do we work with that when we're in partnership? Okay. So when we're giving an assessment, and remember, an assessment is the impact of someone's actions on us, others, or the system. Good assessments are grounded in facts. We'll talk about facts in a minute. They're acknowledged to be an opinion, not a fact. Like, if I have an assessment of someone's behavior, it's my opinion about their behavior. Assume positive intent in the action. is a good assessment. So, right, we judge others by their impact on us, but we judge ourselves by our intention. So how could we assume that somebody who's being disruptive has a positive intention behind their actions? We take into consideration time and place. Is this a good time? Is this a good place to give the assessment? Do we have competency to give them assessment? Do they have competency to receive? And then the purpose for the assessment, right? We kind of like talked a little bit about that in these things. Like, what is our purpose for partnership? Are we clear about those purposes? Have we shifted our commitments? Have we, there was another one that was like that. Have we broke trust? I can't remember where it was. Oh, have we talked about a conflict model, right? Like, are we clear about what kind of conflict model that we're using? Like, what's our purpose? What's our conflict model? How will we communicate about it? And then good assessments are a conversation starter. A lot of the times I've been in feedback conversations where it's just like, here's the feedback, and I'm like, okay, thanks. I guess that's what I say. And then you turn around and you walk away, right? Well, an assessment is the kind of thing that we want. The intention about it is to open up a conversation about how we perceive the world and how somebody else may be perceiving the world differently than we do, right? That's what partnership is. How do we get clear about the direction that we're heading together? And that sometimes takes assessments and sometimes takes conflict. Okay. So, what am I doing? What I do? What? Fretting? Worrying? Contemplating? Thinking? Figuring something out?
Expressing frustration.
And what did I do? Sighed. Great. What else did I do? Yep. Oh. I looked up with exasperation.
No, for inspiration.
I looked up for inspiration. Okay. I looked up. That's a good one. That's what I did. What else did I do?
Touched your face.
Yep, touched my face. Great. Anything else? Great. So these are the facts. These are what a video camera or a microphone would pick up. Everything else that you gave me in the beginning was your opinion. That was your assessment of what was going on for me. So there's so many times that when we're in partnership, that we're leading with our assessment or our opinion about what's happening for the person, as opposed to leading with or sharing the facts. What is it that's, and it's like everywhere that I do this, this always happens the same way. Like there is nobody, very few people, maybe if I've done it before in their workplace or something, or maybe the one odd out of a million, that actually say what it is that I'm doing. But how frequently do we have an opinion about someone that's based on some facts, but the facts go right over our head and we land it with the opinion? And if somebody said to me, you're worried, now I'm not worried. Anybody ever had that before? You're stressed, I'm not stressed. You're upset, I'm not upset, right? Like there's something that's leading us to say those things. It's coming from the heart on the inside, but the way that the delivery that we're giving it is something that causes another person to, unless they're really able to stand in their vulnerability and say, yes, I am upset, thank you for noticing. You know, like it's a very rare person that's able to take that kind of feedback and be completely vulnerable with it, right? Does that make sense so far? Yeah. So when we are working with assessments, one of the things that we want to work with is size, shape, and color. Like, what are they doing? What would a video camera or a microphone would pick up? I think, oh, that's not the next one. Where's that? Yeah. So, facts. Facts are an assertion. There's something that we know to be true, that a video camera or a microphone would pick up, or an EKG machine, right? We could also share things that were happening on the inside, like I felt my heart race, I felt my armpits get sweaty, my palms got sweaty, my eyes started to twitch, right? the data that we have on the inside is also important. Like, ooh, my stomach turned when I saw you arrange that rappel, when I saw you slide down the slope that way. I felt uncomfortable. I thought that you might gouge your leg with the tip of the ice axe or the pick of the ice axe, right? So there are, if we're sharing the facts or what we assert to be true, what a video camera or microphone would pick up, that's how we ground the assessments that we have about other people. If we don't use those facts, our assessments are ungrounded. Our feedback, our opinions, they're just opinions. And they can set off a whole series of responses, right? We all have different filters through which we see and take in the world. And other people have them too. So unless we're in conversation about those, then we never get to know how other people see the world and move beyond to like some of these beautiful, ideals of partnership. Let's see, I had a slide that was back. Size, shape, and color. I talked about this. Assessments are interpretations. They're not a fact. They're neither true nor false. They're neither right nor wrong. They're just simply someone else's opinion. Unless they're grounded in something, and even then, it's still another person's opinion. It's the way another person sees the world is the way that they're seeing us. Like, I may be doing something that doesn't feel dangerous to me, but somebody else may think that what I'm doing is dangerous, right? It's their opinion. It could be true that I'm doing something dangerous, but what is telling you that I'm doing something dangerous? Okay. So what is our collective goal or purpose? Remember when you were in those 3-minute conversations where you introduced yourself and they said thank you, and then you moved on to another person and introduced yourself and said thank you? Like, right, that was a foundation of partnership, right? You were in a partnership. You had a question to answer. Like, what was the goal of that partnership? Do you remember?
To answer the question?
Yeah, answer the questions. Have a conversation and answer the questions. There was a goal in that. We were working together towards a common goal. We have shared interests. We're all here. And, the other things were probably true as well. But when we're thinking about offering someone an assessment, it's really helpful to remember, like, what is the purpose or goal of this assessment? Like, when you're volunteering and you're working with people that are coming to learn how to climb, right? They're coming in to learn how to climb. Can we, I don't know, what else would be the goal? Safety might be a goal, right? We're trying to maintain safety. Whenever we're choosing to give someone assessment in a partnership, it's helpful to remember, like, what are the uber reasons why we're here, right? And then talk to people about them. Like, we are here on this course to teach you how to climb, but our second goal is safety, right? Everybody ever heard the Ecuadorian mountain guide rules? Look good, act cool, safety third. Anyway, this is a funny thing that we used to say all the time. Now my husband's like, oh no, safety first for sure. I am done with looking good or acting cool. Like, be clear about what the purpose is. Like, what's the purpose behind this? Okay, receiving assessments. Is this person's assessment important to you? Do they have ground for this assessment? Like, sometimes maybe someone's giving us, like, my daughter sometimes likes to give me assessments, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to it, but really, you don't really have much ground to give me an assessment on whether you use the computer or whatever, But, like, there are certain people that have the authority to give us assessments. We've either engaged with them, like we're in a partnership, and we've implicitly given them the authority to give us assessments, or we've explicitly given them the authority. But then there are other people that, like, maybe we're at the coffee shop and someone tells us something, right? Do they have the authority? No. What domain is the assessment in, and is there shared purpose? Have you given them the authority to assess you in this domain, and is it the right time or place for you? So those are all the things to pay attention to in receiving assessments. And then giving assessments, it's not much different. Is it important for you to offer the assessment? Do you have ground or authority for the assessment? What is the shared purpose? Yada, yada, yada. Have they given you the authority, and is it the right time or place? Okay, we're not going to do that one. And we're going to go here. So humans and assessments, right? Like assessments are triggering. Like if Sarah were to give me an assessment, like I had somebody give, yesterday I was in California, if you can believe it, but I was interviewing all these people, and part of what I was asking, one of the questions that I was asking them is, what's your feedback process here at this organization? And okay, so this is your great, that's your feedback process. If you had to give me feedback right now, what feedback would you give me? And people were like, whoa, okay. And some of them actually engaged in the process. And for me, it was like this way where I was making myself vulnerable at the moment, but I was also making them vulnerable at the same time, right? So I was asking them this esoteric question, and then I wanted to make it practically applicable in the moment and see what actually happened when people gave me feedback. And it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for both of us, whether it was uncomfortable for me because it was uncomfortable for them or because I didn't know what they were going to say. But it is difficult. When we enter into any assessment with any person, there are threats to our safety, connection, and dignity. And those will set off a habit pattern of action, whether we like it or not, that happens within our system. Are we in choice about that habit pattern of action? And if we're in choice, if we're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go down this path because this is the path that I want to go down, that's great. If we're going down the path consistently without actually being in choice about where we're going, then we might want to think about slowing down, becoming more aware, and learning a new way to be in relationship. We all have filters and stories. Every one of us, and they're all different, even if we're from the same family system, right? Like my sisters see the world differently than I see the world. And then we're all trying to meet our conscious and unconscious needs, regardless of who we are or where we're at. And let's see. What time is it? Okay, good. I think we're just going to go into the next practice. So here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you to get in groups of 2. So now there should be plenty of people. So find a partner, maybe somebody you haven't worked with yet, and then I'll tell you what you're going to do.
Good, how you doing? Been a while, yeah.
Okay, so does everybody have one of those assessment litany cards? They're these cards that they have 2 sides. Here you go. You're going to need one. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have I'm going to shut this down for a second. So if you can all bring your attention up to me in the front of the room, Sarah and I are going to do a little practice, and it's what you all are going to do, okay? So we're going to do the same thing that we did before, but we're going to do it in partnerships. And then we're going to assess each other when we're done with the walking piece. And we're going to say, which if I can see it, I can. We're going to say this assessment litany. So I used to think that this was the dumbest thing ever. Like, what? I have to say this? I have to say it every time. I have to say it 3 times. It's so annoying. But what happens is that when people now give me an assessment in the world, I'm like, oh, it could be true, it could be not true. It could be right, it could be wrong. It could be grounded, it could be ungrounded. Have I given them? Oh, I haven't given them permission to give me the assessment, so just toss it out the window, right? So like there's a way that the habitual pattern of being in this conversation over and over again has helped me be more confident about which assessments I take and which assessments I feel like I'll leave behind, or what follow-up information I need to ask about the assessments that I'm getting. Make sense? Okay. All right, so I would love for you to do those 3 things. Think you can do that?
Yeah, so I'm going to go to you.
Yep.
And then turn around.
Yep.
I'm going to go to you and then walk away.
First you come up to me
Yeah.
and just stand there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next one
Then
I'll
you
go
walk
to
away.
Turn away, and
Yeah.
then I walk by you.
And then behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm ready now.
Okay. And then, okay, hang on a sec before you go. So what we're doing is you're noticing what's going on for you, and I'm noticing what's going on for you. And you're noticing what's going on for me, and I'm noticing what's going on for me.
Got
so
it.
that we're going to share that in a minute. And
Okay.
right, we're looking for size, shape, and color.
Okay.
Okay, go.
but I did anyways.
Okay. So then we're going to be in this conversation. I acknowledge that you have, Sarah, can I give you an assessment?
Sure.
Or why don't you say that? Well, no, you say that. Yeah, whatever I just said first. Sarah, can I give you an assessment?
Yes.
Okay. And then you read this.
I acknowledge that you have an assessment. Your assessment is neither true or false. Your assessment is neither right nor wrong. It may be grounded, it may be ungrounded. I have given you the authority to make this assessment, and I'd like to speak more with you about this. Thank you. You're welcome.
I know. Well, that's just the whole thing, right? Like, you're welcome. That's fine. Okay. So I saw that on the first time, your eyes stayed level with mine, and you were looking me in the eye the whole time. And then at some point, you smiled as it was getting longer in the process. And then after you smiled, you turned around and walked away. The second time when you walked in and then turned away, I saw that you didn't look at me. You maybe glanced up and then glanced down and then glanced up and glanced down again. And then the last time, it was just even the most limited eye contact of all three of them. So, and then for me, what happened on the inside was that I the first time felt really comfortable, like I could feel my feet and it felt, really grounded, and that didn't feel disruptive for me. The second time when you walked away, I felt my heart fell a little bit inside my body. I was like, oh, don't go. And then the third time was interesting. I felt very little. I didn't feel very much of anything, except my back body got really hot. So that's a little bit about what you're doing.
So I'm confused on assessment and facts.
Yeah.
Because the first dialogue you had with her was facts, how she approached you and how she looked at you and looked at you. And then when you said how I felt inside, that's when I thought it became an assessment because it was more of an opinion. Am I wrong?
Those are my facts, and those are the facts that were happening for me inside my body.
I thought assessment couldn't be facts, it had to be just opinions.
So there's assessments, and then there's assertions. So the assertions are the facts. The facts are things that are either a video camera or a microphone would pick up, or if we had a really fancy EKG machine or some sort of CAT scan or brain scanner, you could probably see that there were these things going. So I'm a master somatic coach. I do body stuff for a living. If you can't feel anything in your body, it's okay. Like, this is what I do for a living. So I've been doing this for a really long time, noticing what happens in my body when things are going on. So if you can just get like, ooh, I lost my breath. Like, were you breathing that whole time?
I was very focused on what I was supposed to be doing.
And so I don't even know. I didn't. Yeah, I don't know that you were right. So like, that's one thing that probably if we had an EKG machine on Sarah, it might pick up like her heart rate getting up higher because there's a lack of oxygen getting into the body, right? So these are just things for you to notice. This is a practice for you to expand your awareness a little bit about maybe what happens in partnership or what happens in partnership in your body, okay? Anybody, we're just trying, we're practicing here, so it's okay. And I'll walk around and see how everybody's doing. Ready? Okay, go. All right. So, thank your partners.
Thank you very much.
And find a seat.
Yeah, same to you, Chuck.
What was that? I'm not even going to leave the slide up because it bugs me, but the light. So tell me a little bit about what that was like for you. What did you learn that might be relevant to your life, to volunteering, or to being a leader, or being a partner? Yeah.
I worked with Joe, and what we both experienced was the second time around was way more comfortable and way more personal after we spent a minute chatting and getting to know each other a little bit. The first time around, we were both kind of like wiggling our toes and kind of trying to not laugh, you know, like just because we were a little uncomfortable with the proximity.
Yeah.
But then after we sort of got comfortable with each other and tried, you know, just breathing and being present with just the moment, it was way easier.
And what does that tell you about you as a partner, or you as a volunteer, or you as a leader?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to try, for me anyway, when I'm teaching a class, to try to establish a friendly, open, equal relationship and make it be a safe place for them to learn and ask questions and not always just be like an authority figure.
Cool. And how would you do that now that might be different than what you would do before? Okay, cool. Just curious. All right, anybody else? What did you learn about yourself in partnership as a volunteer, as a leader? Yeah.
Well, I think it was helpful to try to stay in the moment and be observant.
Yeah.
Just observant of, for example, Riley, the first time I was like, is she smiling? And the second time I was like, she's definitely smiling. The first time, right? And I was like, there's a difference. While I was like staring at her.
Yeah.
Face. And then also, yeah, just being observant of my own feelings also. And then also when I was giving an assessment, just saying like, yeah, are these facts or am I actually the second time I was like, am I just interpreting she smiled or did she actually smile? And I was like, no, she actually smiled because I was watching her facial expression closely both times.
Great. So kind of what I'm hearing is that, and I'm trying to remember to repeat back, it's hard for me, but is that you got more comfortable the more practice that you had at doing this. And then the more practice that you had allowed you to feel more present. And that when you were more present, you were able to kind of confirm facts that you saw, that you thought maybe, did I see them before or did I not see them before? So when you were more present, you were able to see things that maybe when you were disrupted the first time, you weren't as clear about. Is that true? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
So I guess for myself, I found something really interesting in that the first time around I was really uncomfortable. It's like someone coming up like, I mean the first few times maybe, you know, different people. Like this is really uncomfortable to have someone right in my space and, you know, that's uncomfortable. But the second time I think I'm going to be different about this and I'm going to take this opportunity to just, wow, to make a connection like this. I'm present and I'm connecting with this person. Like flip it around into something positive.
Yeah,
And
beautiful.
that was really mind-blowing.
Cool. That's awesome. So you were in choice in that moment. You decided to try something different. That's awesome. And what impact will that have on your ability to be a leader or a partner?
Well, I don't know. I think I'm really new at this, but trying to just look at things differently and come with more, be open to different possibilities about the experience, I think.
Great.
Oh, and
Yeah.
I will say, as Marilee's partner, I was like, the second time around, I actually decided to try to be more. Her assessment was, you know, that she thought I was friendly and I was calmer, but I tried to be more abrupt. So I actually was more abrupt. So that was good.
Well, isn't that interesting how, so you tried to be more abrupt the second time, and you had a different outlook. Like the first time when people walked up to you, it was disruptive, it felt disruptive to you and you felt uncomfortable. And so you changed your attitude for the second time and you were like, well, what would it be like if I put a positive spin on this? And then the impact was different, right? Like but this goes to show you, like we all have different filters through which we see the world. So one person's pain is another person's pleasure, so to speak. And so like we don't know what impact those things will have. Like you two one was moving faster and one was moving slower, and there was an assessment. I think you're moving fast. And it was like, okay, well, do you want him to move slower? Well, yeah, I guess I do. Okay, cool. Well, then that could be something that you could ask for, right, in the partnership. But if we don't take time to figure out what's going on for us, if we don't take time to notice what's happening for another person, those moments may pass us by, and we may end up living our life in a way that's these automatic reactions or responses, just simply reacting to what's happening in the world and not actually asking for what we want or choosing to be different about who we are to see if we have a different experience of someone else. What are some lingering questions that you have? Yeah.
We had a question about, sometimes if we're in classes and things like that, us giving assessments back and forth is very essential.
Yeah.
But, how to, I think probably most of us have had an experience of perhaps somebody is not receptive at that moment.
Yeah.
You feel like there's a safety issue or you feel like whatever, that,
So what were some of the things that might be helpful for you in that moment that we talked about here maybe?
Yeah, I think you could try to lead off with a fact, right? Like, I noticed you were holding your ice axe in this way or something.
Great.
And I feel worried for you or something.
Beautiful. Yeah. So when we lead with fact, yeah, that was amazing. Yeah, no, that's actually really good. When we lead with fact, it's hard to argue with facts. Of course, we can argue with them. And when we are belligerent about arguing with people with the facts, we know that we've hit like a DEFCON 5 level of like, okay, nothing really is going to get past or beyond this. So then we have to, maybe revert to other, like, okay, you're just sitting there for now until we figure out how to calm down, or you're helping that person calm down, right? I don't know what you all use for those types of techniques, but like maybe you're breathing with them. Maybe you're, whatever presencing technique you've learned, you're doing with that DEFCON 5 person. But if there's still a person that's able to listen and be responsive, right? Try to change your perspective. Like, oh, what was it like for me when I was in their position? Or what are the facts that I see? Oh, you're holding your ice axe wrong. People are like, oh, I had no idea that's why I was doing it wrong. What are other things that you see that come up for you regularly? Like, what are the courses that you teach? Navigation and ice axe arrest. Not yet, but you're going up Baker this weekend. Okay, scramble class. You're teaching or taking? Taking. Okay, cool.
I'm also taking Belinda's first response.
Nice.
As well, so I'm kind of curious about that with calming down.
Totally. Hopefully they'll talk about something like that. Yeah, yeah. What other classes do people teach here? Not technical rock climbing. And John, you've been here for a while, right?
A lot of courses.
A lot of different courses. Yeah.
I assist with basic alpine, basic glacier, and scrambling.
Great.
Basic glacier scrambling.
Great.
rock.
Awesome. Not yet? Okay.
Navigation and scrambling.
Awesome. Great. So are there things that what are things that you're normally assessing for people when you're on these courses?
Safety.
And what does that mean? What does safety mean? Like when they're doing, you said glaciers and navigation? No.
Scrambling
Scrambling. Okay, so what are you assessing for safety?
Like just rope management, balance, how they're holding the ice axe.
Cool. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn to your neighbor and have a conversation like, what of these things that we've talked about today, either the move toward, move away, move against, how will that inform your assessment of people in the field, right? How will that inform how you relate or deal with them? What about the, yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Because I find that I participate in all three of those, but it oftentimes depends on who is on the other end of the walkway.
Beautiful. So you're in choice. That's awesome. And when you get super triggered, which one do you do?
It depends on the trigger.
Okay. So when you get really triggered by the closest person in your life,
Are they angry? Like, are they angry at me? Are they yelling? Do they have?
my assumption for you would be that you would be a move toward. Like you would want to know what's going on with the person. You would want to be curious about like, how are you doing? Are you okay? What's going on?
But a lot of times I'll walk away first
Okay.
and think about it
Okay.
and then come back.
So then maybe you're a move away. So we all have choices, like, right? It's not always going to be the same thing all the time, but my hope from this course today is that you'll get a few things. One, I think I had it on a slide up here. I can take a look and find out where it is. There it goes. That you'll learn how to build trust and partnership, right? So one of the things that I heard you two say was that, oh, after we got to know each other a little, after I settled into this, it was easier for us to be in relationship. I even heard some laughter over there, right? Like, so the more practices that we have in being in conversation with people about different things, the better, the more likely it is that we're going to understand a little bit more about them so that when we're in the field with them, we have a little bit more rapport, we have a little bit more trust, right, in the partnerships that we're in, either with our co-partners or with the people that we're in the field with, right? That you'll increase your attention, that you'll know when you're triggered. So there's a way that, like, am I a move toward? Am I a move away? Am I a move against? I don't know what you all are, but I hope that when you leave here, that you'll be in curiosity about that. Like, what do I do when I get triggered? And am I going to be able to be in choice about that? Like, am I just gonna stay in this place of being uncomfortable here? Or I'm gonna try to do something different. And then maybe you start noticing that about other people, like, oh, they just got in an argument and they just totally checked out. Or like, wow, this person's totally chatting me up after I just yelled at them. Like, what's going on? Or this person wants to fight with me. Oh, they must be a move against, right? That you start to have a little bit more perspective on what it is that you're meeting in the world. It's not necessarily about you or your, the impact that people have on you is what we judge. We assess people on their impact, but we assess ourselves on our intention, so that you start thinking a little bit more about like, oh, I wonder what their intention is. Like when I walk up to Sarah really close, like she doesn't like that one. I don't mind that one. My intention is not to be disruptive to her. My intention in that moment is to be in connection. That's how I best connect, is like straight in the face with other people. That's my way of connecting. And so when we meet people like that are in our faces, that may be their way of connecting. They may not trying to be disruptive to us. They may just be trying to get their safety, connection, or dignity needs met. And then speak up or stand down, you asked about this. Like, when is the moment where we need to speak up and say something? Where we need to like change the way that we are being? When is it that we need to speak up when he's taken a long time or the rope's on the ledge, right? Like coming all the way back to the beginning. Like, is there a time, or can we notice when we're getting in people's faces or starting to over-explain or being like talking too much, right? Do we need to stand down at that moment and ask some different questions? Like, can we say, why don't you break up into groups of 2 and talk about what you learned so far, right? Like I talked about the meta process. All you people run courses, or maybe you run groups in different areas. Like, what are you taking away from the little tips, tricks, and tools that I've used to have you working in groups together that you can use when you're out in the field? Okay, turn to your neighbor. What did you learn about ice axe arrest so far? How do you want to hold the ice axe? How would you teach holding the ice axe to your partner? And you have 2 minutes, right? Like, what would it be like to use some of those tips and tricks when you're out there in the field? Does that make sense so far? So we're going to go around. We only have a couple minutes left. Like one thing that you're taking away from tonight. Whoever starts, we'll just move to their left.
I thought Michelle hit on it more like Stoicism or the CBT, where it's self-awareness, self-examination, and then self-determination. I think that kind of parallels for me those 3 goals you have.
Yeah, great. And so what are you taking away that's new to you that you might have learned here today?
A trigger where I go to black and white when I get
Okay, cool.
that panic.
Great. So we'll go to your left, Mary Lou.
Oh, how I can change my perception of a situation to have a different outlook.
Great. I'm taking away that there are many different, hang on, let me think about it for a minute. I'm taking away that I love, again, teaching these courses, and that I love having so many different people and opinions and perspectives, and I learned so much about how to teach people through actually being in the lead in these courses.
I'm taken away of, as an observer, seeing what the actual facts are.
Great.
Compared to jumping to the assumptions that I might formulate.
Thanks.
I'm taking away that everybody has their own story behind their actions, and to focus on actions and not their intentions, or to stick with the facts.
Cool.
I think a lot about giving and receiving feedback and support, and for myself and supporting folks in this organization. And I liked the idea of having a framework that was just a constant and that was agreed on by everybody involved. So give people an opt-in and an opt-out. I liked that framework a lot.
I'm taking away the idea that being triggered can, one response to that is to start telling stories and start interpreting things. And that goes for either if I'm being triggered or if I'm working with somebody who's been triggered. What kinds of things are they going to fall into?
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, mine is more of a leading with facts instead of just opinions right away.
Cool. Thanks.
So a few things, but I'll just name one, and that's developing more of a relationship with someone that I give them, someone that I may be giving an assessment to, so it can be more friendly and casual, not authoritative.
Cool.
The idea of making it a practice. It's kind of something I've been thinking a lot about lately, just in terms of making difficult conversations a practice, whether
Great.
it's in avalanche terrain, or when it's talking about social justice issues, or whether it's giving and receiving feedback.
Beautiful. Thanks. Yeah.
Just about observing closely and also facts versus opinion, but also doing a pause before you give your assessment to the person to ask if they're in the mood for it.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I was actually going to almost say